Hello, everybody. It is I, your friendly neighborhood INFP, and because today is Sunday and because I am a Christian, I figured I would do something fun this time around, and that would be to give you the MBTI types from the Bible. I'm going to be more specifically looking at the more popular characters of the Bible, and I'm not going to do it like I did the Fae and the mythological creatures. I am instead going to go through the characters themselves and give them an MBTI type, specifically what I think their MBTI type is. So, with that being said, I will start off with the first person that I can somewhat easily type, and that is Noah. For Noah, I have given him. I haven't really decided whether ISTP or ISFP, but he is one of those. I believe. I believe because of like crafting the ark and like being with the animals and like being like the only righteous person at the time. Definitely ISTP or ISFP, although one could lean towards ISFP, I suppose. Next up, we have Abraham, the founding father of I guess, the three patriarchs of the Jewish founding, or the Israel founding. Uh, he, I believe, is. I want to say ESFJ, but he could also be an ENFJ, and I'm honestly not sure which of the two he is, but I do get very extroverted feeling vibes from him, and he was also like very rich and like everybody knew of him and everything. Uh, Even though he was a nomad, like he was well known across the lands. The kings knew of him, other people knew of him. He was quite well known. But I don't know whether he's more of an ESFJ or an ENFJ. Next up, because I can't really type Isaac, I've got nothing substantial enough on Isaac for me to be able to type accurately enough. It's not like we see enough from him that I can properly type him. But I will type Jacob. Jacob, I would say, is an ENTJ. He sought power. He sought to like gain control over his brother. He sought to have all these things. So for Jacob, I am giving ENTJ because he was extroverted. He was tricky. He did all these things. And one might say that he could have been an INTJ, but I personally think he's more of an ENTJ. So there's that. Next up, we go into Moses, and Moses, I would say, is an ISFJ. Now, this is a thing that most people will disagree with. Some will say ESTJ, some will say ISTJ. I personally believe that he was an ISFJ. He often did things on the benefit of other people. He kind of tried to keep the harmony and the peace going, and he was driven to emotion a lot quicker than perhaps a thinker would be. Plus, I think he was an introvert because he really, 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 really did not want to lead the people of Israel. He was just perfectly fine, living his life, doing his thing with his wife and children until God called him into rescuing the Israelites, as he said he would. And so for Moses, I am giving ISFJ. His brother Aaron is the extrovert of the group. I would say. I would say ESFJ for Aaron, maybe. Does that fit? He could be another type, but that's just what I'm throwing out there right off the bat. For Jacob, and Caleb, or is it Jacob and Caleb? Joshua, sorry. Joshua and Caleb. I will give Joshua, from what I'll give Joshua, from what I know of him, what was it that an ENTJ, he believed that he could take them on, lead the people, all of that, do the right things, conquer the lands and all that. For Caleb, I will give him ESTP, even though he was 80 when part of Joshua's story started to leave off. Caleb's still in his 80s like, oh yeah, no, I can totally take on that mountain with my men, so just let me go and do that. And Joshua's like, you got it. So, Caleb, I'm giving ESTP, Joshua, ENTJ, although he could also been something else. So that's what I'm giving those. Moving on, we come into the Book of Judges, and the ones that I know quite clearly. This is, once again, I'm not going over the ones that are a little more obscure to most people. I'm going over the ones that people may mostly know about. So with that being said, from Judges, I am giving Samson and Gideon. Samson is either an ESTP or an ESFP. Some would probably lean further on the ESFP side. Some would lean more on the ESTP side. It depends on how you look at it. I am kind of undecided, but he is definitely one of the two. There is no questions about that. I'm just leaning a little further towards the ESFP side, but I will also accept ESTP for Samson. For Gideon, the first thing that came to mind when it came to Gideon was ISTJ. He wanted to make sure everything was right. He wanted to test things out to make sure that he heard things. He didn't necessarily want to go into it himself. He wanted to just live his life. And then, of course, his men were like the ones that he like constantly cut down on due to God's instructions. And I feel like Gideon might have been that ISTJ. Just a general feeling I'm getting from the guy. He could be another type, but I am unsure as to what type that would be. Going on, we have Ruth, and Ruth I'm going to give ISFJ. She would not leave her mother-in-law. She was stuck by her. She followed her into the land. She followed her mother-in-law's instructions, ended up getting Boaz as a husband, and yeah, because of like all the things she did and like the loyalty she had and like not wanting, like, I have nowhere else to go, I'm going to stick by what I like. I know you, I'm going to follow you. So I feel like Ruth would have been the ISFJ. Continuing on, we have David. We have Saul and David. People probably want to know Samuel as well. Okay, this is going to be a bit difficult. David is the easiest of the group, so I will leave him last, because after David I have to do Solomon. Saul, I think Saul might have been That's a good question. What would Saul have been? First reaction is I want to give King Saul ESTP. But another part of me is like, could he also have been an ESTJ? And I'm not like, I'm not entirely sure. So that's a bit up in the air. Samuel, also a bit difficult. Yeah, I've got nothing on Samuel. A type is not coming to me. If you guys have a type for the prophet Samuel in the book of Samuel and in some parts the book of Kings, do let me know. But I got nothing for him. David is an INFP. I largely believe King David was an INFP. He was very strong into morals, very strong into poetry, very strong into doing the right thing, very strong into not betraying the king, even though the king wanted to betray him. Despite like him being fully in the right to do so, he stuck by his convictions and his values, wrote poetry about his experiences, struggled to know himself and God, and I just like all of that just gives me an INFP vibe for King David. Some people have said King David's an ENFP, but I personally think King David is more of an INFP, so I'm giving King David an INFP. Then we have Solomon. Now, there have been instances where I have thought Solomon to be an ENTJ, King Solomon that is. But more and more, I get brought back to him being an ENTP and him like just having all these thoughts and like experiences and like these things that he's constantly pondering, plus his wit and like being able to handle situations as they come up very quickly, asking for wisdom, all of that. Like, yeah, he could have been an ENTJ, and I will accept if people see him as an ENTJ. But like every time I think of him, like I always go back to the ENTP. So I think King Solomon was an ENTP personally. As for the kings after that, it's a lot more vague with what they did. So I can't really give anything on them, but I can give something on Elijah and Elisha. Elijah, I will say, was probably another ISFJ. There are a lot of ISFJs I feel in the Bible. Elijah was probably, he was either an ISFJ or an ISFP, and I don't like those are the two things I'm getting from him. He was definitely introverted. He was definitely reclusive. He definitely got scared easily. Although some people might call him an INFP too, but I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm going to say either ISFJ or ISFP for Elijah. Elisha was much more extroverted, much more determined, wanted double of Elijah's blessing, wanted to do like double the miracles. It was much more goal orientated and go and do this thing. So I think Elisha was an ENTJ. He could be an ESTJ, who knows, but I personally get ENTJ vibes from Elisha. Although if he was an introvert, then INTJ. So that there's those ones. Then going into more of the prophets, let's say with Daniel. Daniel, I get INFJ vibes from. Just because, well, no, hold on, let me retract that. Daniel, ENFJ vibes from, sorry. Well, no, wait, hold on. Now I'm conflicted. The prophet Daniel was either an INFJ or an ENFJ. And I am not sure which of the two he actually would have been. Although some people might see him as a thinker. If he is the thinker, then INTJ. Those are the things I'm getting from Daniel. Let me know what you think, and we'll just move on. Isaiah, I'm going to give... Isaiah, I'm going to give Isaiah INFJ. I don't think he was an extrovert. He was most often alone and like seeing future prophecies. Not that indicates him as a INFJ or anything. But like his morals and his duties and like wanting to like give people hope and all of that, it feels like an INFJ to me. Speaking of which, I forgot one person. I forgot like way back in Genesis. I forgot about Joseph and the many colored dream coats. That guy. Him, I also get either INFJ or INFP vibes from. I know I was going through the books, but I'm going to jump back because now that I've remembered, Joseph is either an INFJ or an INFP. And I am torn between the two because I can see an argument for both. But going back to the others, we have so after Daniel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, another INFP, very poetic, was known as the weeping prophet, was very high on his moral code and everything, wanted people to do right but had no power to like get them to do anything. He saw everything collapse around him and like gave prophecies of it all happening and everything, and he had it was a tough time for Jeremiah. So I'm giving Jeremiah an INFP because of all of that. Because like that's kind of like the vibe he gives. I've realized I haven't really given any ENFPs as of late. There's got to be some ENFPs in the Bible. Let me think. So after Jeremiah, it becomes the minor prophets, and I don't really have much on them. And then we jump into the New Testament. There's seriously got to be an ENFP somewhere in all of this. Let's just go into the New Testament, and I'll retract if I've forgotten somebody. For the New Testament, we have Peter. Peter, I'm giving the ESFP tag. He was very gung-ho, go about things, very big into his own personal feelings, got himself stuck in foot and mouth disease quite often, was ready to go at it at a moment's notice, and was like very big on like, doing the right thing as well, but like he didn't know always what the right thing was to do or say. So Peter, I'm giving ESFP, just a vibe I get for him. John, the Apostle John, we have almost everybody agrees that he was an INFP. For both due to the Gospel of John, the books of John, the one, I think it was 3 books, 1st John, 2nd John, 3rd John. I'm going to look really stupid if that's wrong. And then, of course, Revelations. And because of all that, very, very big INFP vibes. Nothing like it's like big on, one thing, and then big on trying to make sense of something that you're going to have a very big on metaphors and similes and all of that, which is kind of like the INFP's bread and butter, and almost everybody agrees that he was an INFP. Another INFP from the New Testament is Mary, the sister of Martha, who is an INFP. She wanted to do what she saw was right. She followed her own thing. Martha, I believe, was an ESTJ, because of like her always working and doing stuff and making sure everything was in order and making sure like the family did the right thing and work. Like I feel like she was more of an ESTJ type, and Mary was more of an INFP type. From there, Judas was... I feel horrible for saying this, but he was a greedy person. He stole from the treasury. He wasn't the nicest guy. He barely shows up in the story at all. Um, I can't. He was the treasurer of the party. So usually that type usually falls to a J type. And he was probably a thinker. I'm just going to say either ISTJ or INTJ. And I feel like an ISTJ wouldn't necessarily do that, but an INTJ might. So most people will probably agree with the INTJ side, which is horrible for INTJs. But yeah, that's on Judas. The Apostle Paul was, or not the Apostle, well, was he? Anyways, Paul, he was an ENTP. He consistently used his wit and things to get his way, to get out of situations, and to do things that whenever he got into trouble and he could use his wit or use some kind of loophole rule or something or other, he would immediately use it. Like when they were trying to capture him and he turned the two on them sides knowing what both of them believed. He knew how to manipulate to get out of various situations. And he also would go and poke the bear several times. Because, he believed that was what he needed to do in order to get his message across. So, the bear not being the religious Jewish sect, so like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Not so much the Romans, because the Romans were all about Paul, except for Nero, who ended up getting him killed, but that's a different story altogether. So Paul, ENTP. Now, people will probably be like, Jesus saying, like, every Christian typer will feel uncomfortable doing this, but almost every Christian typer will also give Jesus an INFJ. So that's what's commonly accepted within the circle, even though we all feel like super uncomfortable doing it and we don't like, dwelling on it too much because of like, should we be doing this? Is this okay? Like it's a very conflicting thing because of many different reasons. I feel like I haven't given an ENFP to anyone. There has to have been somebody in the Bible who was an ENFP. But who? Luke was an ISTJ, I believe. The one who wrote, because he went into explicit detail as to the life and times of Jesus, who Jesus talked to, went and interviewed absolutely everybody to make sure he had everything down pat. And then, of course, in Acts, where he tried to get as much detail down. So I think Luke was even though he was a doctor, I believe he was an ISTJ. So that, I almost forgot about Luke. Who else? I feel like there's an ENFP somewhere in here. I've got to find them, and I'm going through my memory bank. Now, I'm not entirely sure about this, but Ezekiel might have been the ENFP we're looking for. I'm not entirely sure. You can give your own opinions, but that's what I got. And with that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.